For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings. How some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed. Some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed, all murdered for within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king, keeps death his court, and there the antics sit, scoffing his state and grinning at his palm, allowing him a breath, a little scene to monarchize, be feared and kill with looks, infusing him with self and vain conceit. As if the flesh which walls about our life were brass impregnable and humored thus, comes at the last and with a little pin bores through his castle wall. And farewell, king. And farewell,
Hello, everybody. I am back. This is going to be the third and final part of our Biblical Monarchy series. And we're going to be, first of all, do you like that song? It was kind of an experimental grunge thing that I did. It's just lines from Shakespeare's Richard II, actually. I was going to put a much happier song on today to start the week, but my wife's grandmother just passed, so please be praying for Judy. Anyways, we're going into picking up with our Bible study again. So with everything that we've talked about, I just want to put a couple more nails in the coffins and then deal with one more possible objection that I've heard. So let's talk about Romans 13 verses 1 through 7, because people really like to nuance this. I mean, and by nuance I mean try to do away with it by the way they interpret it. because it continues this thread that's begun in the Old Testament, and it echoes the words of our Savior. So Romans 13, 1 through 7. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For the rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same, for he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their duties, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. I mean, that totally defeats any basis for the American Revolution right there. We don't revolt over taxes. we don't. I mean, just it's so stupid. Like the Americans, like the New Englanders specifically, those good, solid Puritans or descendants of the Puritans. They were all smuggling and trading with France during the French and Indian War when it was illegal, and they don't want to pay taxes on anything. Um, And so, I mean, they're evildoers. Like, there's no way around it. The Americans were 100% the evildoers. And we always, like, nobody talks about it, about how much money was made off of all the smuggling and not wanting to pay taxes. And they were willing to go to the point of tarring and feathering people, scarring them for life, burning stuff down, beating people up on the docks, threatening people for years because they wanted to protect their smuggling activities. It's illegal. There's no way we would stand for it today if we caught people doing it. So there is absolutely no scriptural basis for the American Revolution. We'll get into that when we do the series. Um, we'll explain a lot of the things that were going on. There was no scriptural warrant or basis for it at all. At all, it's condemned. The British were right to fight back and to try to maintain control of this continent. All right, so let's keep going. And that's regardless of all the other stuff about them. People bring up all kinds of ad hoc excuses. I don't care. Like you don't revolt over taxes. That's not a scriptural thing. That's something men came up with. Okay, so in John 19:11, what does Christ say to Pilate? When Pilate's like, "I have the authority to crucify," Christ says to him, "You would have no power over me at all unless it were given you from above." So divine right is the basis of all legitimate government, not anything else. Sovereignty, authority, power comes from above, comes from God, not from the bottom up, not from parliaments or congresses, not from the mob. God raises up and puts down. You can't like quantify the workings of providence, which is what a lot of people try to do. So the biblical testimony is very, very clear. So if at this point you're watching this video and your first response is to frantically start trying to make these verses of no effect, to explain them away, it really kind of sounds like you value Enlightenment ideology more than Scripture. You have to get pretty creative to get these verses to say, what an American would want them to say. So my criteria for looking at these scriptural passages is very simple. Render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. It's the words of Christ. If Caesar interferes with what is due to God, then we can talk about fighting back or whatever. And even then, that doesn't have anything to do with a tax revolt or creating a new form of government or popular sovereignty. None of that enters in here. People just project that in there with no scriptural warrant whatsoever. I mean, honestly, resistance often means just flight or martyrdom. It depends on the circumstance. Saint Justin Martyr pleads with the Emperor Marcus Aurelius in his letters for the Christians to be left in peace, and he ultimately gives his life during persecution. In 300 years of Christians being persecuted, there is no Christian constitutional freedom revolution against the Roman Empire. There's no three percenters. There's no Molon Labe. There's no don't tread on me. There's nothing like that. Okay? Even though the emperor is a pagan who's often killing Christians. And what's the result? What happens when you actually follow Romans 13, 1 through 7? God gives the empire to the Christians, and Christianity spreads like wildfire. So they were patient. They waited on God. They were loyal subjects who did everything that was asked of them and more, as long as it didn't violate the teachings of the church. You have people like Saint Mercurius who went out and just slaughtered barbarians in the name of the emperor. He was a Christian, and ended up becoming a martyr and a saint in the 200s. There's tons of hagiography about stuff like that. So, I'm just saying. Um, and this, like, by the way, this is part of what I tell all the younger guys that are bouncing around in the right wing sphere. Don't go off with some shady group. Don't Fed post. Don't do that. Don't be plotting. Pray, pay your taxes, be diligent, be patient. Because even the most godless systems of government are punishments from God for our correction, or trials in order for us to win crowns. Empires have been conquered through Christian charity and perseverance. A few more verses from the New Testament so we can wrap up this part, and then we'll get to Moses and the Sanhedrin. So lots more can be said. We'll probably come back at some point and do detailed breakdowns of 1st and 2nd Chronicles. We could examine the book of Maccabees to see how and when resistance is justified biblically. But let's go to 1 Peter 2, 13 through 17. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto governors, or unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free, and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Okay? So, and then what's crazy to me is that I'll bring that up, and I heard this objection more than once. People, again, it's all ad hoc, right? There's no through line. It's just, well, I do that phrase. So someone once told me, well, that phrase honor the king just means to, like, it just refers to all governments. So it can refer to the president and Congress and whatever as well. And I was like, in a general sense, yes, I agree with you. But it also has a literal sense. Like, they're literally talking about a king. It's ad hoc, right? It's arbitrary to be like, well, it doesn't mean what it specifically says it means. It means something more general. Okay. I, I mean, it can be both. Actually, it is both. So that's one response I've heard before. Just like I may have talked about this. So I have some friends who are Seventh Day Adventist, and one of them or two of them I really like. They're not bad people, but one of them, when I was bringing all this stuff up to him one time at work, because we were having a discussion, he's like, when we talked about the promises to Abraham, and he was like, well, I know it says that, kings will come from him. He didn't know that, first of all, poor guy. But when I was reading it off to him, he was like, well, it's like, it's tucked in there amidst all the other blessings. He goes, well, that one specific phrase in there, that's not a promise. That's not a blessing from God. That's just a recognition of what's going to come down the road. Like, God didn't institute it. And I was like, hold up. Hold up. So you arbitrarily pick the one phrase you don't like and go, this is not a prophecy. Or it's not God's will. It's just a description of what's going to come. That doesn't make any sense, dude. That doesn't make any sense at all. The only reason you would make an ad hoc case like that is because you know that it makes your position look bad. So the Holy Scriptures are not a handbook of rebellion and revolution. I think it's so bizarre that people treat it that way. The Scriptures have to be so badly twisted and mangled to support the anti-monarchist position. You got to ignore whole sections and chunks of it. Honestly, it's kind of laughable that people ever came up with these ideas. False teachers puffed up, tickling men's ears, telling people what they wanted to hear. When we get into Patriarcha, which is going to be our next book, I'm going to have to go through and make slides for it because some of the arguments are pretty detailed. It's going to take us one show probably just to get through the introduction. Um, and it's not a super hard book to read, but it's just you have to, if you have all the context, a lot of the arguments make more sense. But that we'll see sort of all these arguments that start to be brought up, starting with Catholics, people like Thomas Aquinas. They'll start to argue for popular sovereignty, and they're false teachers because they start arguing for things like popular sovereignty and whatever from Aristotle, from scriptural passages, so that they can tear down the king and elevate the pope, so that the pope can be the universal, supreme, temporal, and spiritual head of the whole world, the world god emperor, so to speak. And so it's done for a very specific purpose. That's why people read these things into the Holy Scriptures. All right, so last passage here that I want to do is in the New Testament is Revelation 21:24. So this is at the very end. It says, "And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it." So even in the eschaton, there are kings leading the saved nations, not presidents, not congresses. So if you have a problem with monarchy, you might want to prepare yourself, because even in heaven there's kings bringing their people as an offering to God. That's the way that's described in Scripture. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is talk about this objection that I saw. I read this a really long time ago by John Calvin, and it really doesn't hold much weight for me as an argument. We may actually go ahead and start the Patriarcha stream today, because I realized I did not have a lot of material left. But let's go to Numbers 11. I've got it on my phone. So Numbers 11, "And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched." Let's see. "Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, and every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased." So where's the popular sovereignty? Where's the democracy? The people just keep whining and getting judged by God, and their leader, Moses, has to save them because he's the righteous one. I mean, just flies in the face of all ideas of popular sovereignty. "And Moses said unto the Lord, Wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? And wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them, that thou shouldest say unto me, Carry them in thy bosom, as a nursing father beareth the sucking child, unto the land which thou swarest unto their fathers? Whence should I have flesh to give unto all this people? For they weep unto me, saying, Give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all this people alone, because it is too heavy for me. And if thou deal thus with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of hand, if I have found favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. And the Lord said unto Moses, Gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. And I will come down and talk with thee there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon thee, and I will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not thyself alone." Let's see. "And Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacle. And the Lord came down in a cloud, and spake unto him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that, when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied, and did not cease. But there remained 2 of the men in the camp. The name of the one was Eldad, and the name of the other Modad. And the Spirit rested upon them, and they were of them that were written, but went not out unto the tabernacle, and they prophesied in the camp." Um, so, so what happens is, the fact that there are 70 elders, this is the beginning of the Sanhedrin, which was an authoritative body. It was not elected. It was never elected by the people. It was kind of this aristocratic council. So Moses was asking God for a council for people to help him judge and decide cases because he was sick of dealing with everybody's problems all the time. Now, John Calvin, if memory serves, because it's been a while since I read the Institutes, John Calvin and others, and not just him, others have brought this up before too, that, well, see, there's 70 elders there that God instituted to reign. So that's like the equivalent of a parliament or a congress, right? Well, okay, hold on a second. So if you're familiar at all with the idea of the divine council, which like Michael Heiser, Lord of Spirits, all that has kind of helped to popularize. God has a council, right? And God's spirit rests on those, the angels and the saints. Is anybody under any illusions about who is king and calls all the shots? It's God. So he has his council, to help and participate with him. But God is obviously still the king, the leader. So when Moses asks to for part of the burden to be borne by others, first of all, Moses asks for it. The people don't demand it, and it's not a command of God either. Moses, the leader, the sole leader of Israel, says, I need help. I can't hear everybody's cases all day. I can't judge the people all day. And, they're not listening and whatever. So God tells him, okay, I will do this for you. I'm going to give you a council. I'm going to give you guys, and, they don't just pick people at random. There's no women, right? They pick men who are already kingly figures, fathers of the tribes and elders. They come together. They receive the spirit that was on Moses. So now they are sharers in his authority in the sense that they judge and act on behalf of Moses. Just like, judges and sheriffs and all these other different offices, they act on behalf of, in the Middle Ages, they act on behalf of the king. The king's peace officers kept the king's peace. The king's judges dispensed the king's justice. The king couldn't hear every case. And so he appointed judges, and the king couldn't physically go out and capture every single criminal. So he appointed, sheriffs and stuff like that. It's the same thing that we got going on here. And in neither case, neither in the historical case of kings in England and France and whatever, or in this case in Numbers 11, in neither case is it an elected body that someone just comes up with. It's something that Moses asks God for, and God divinely institutes. By the way, so I watched a while back, I tried to watch, I couldn't finish the Alex Soren, Aaron Gallagher debate on apostolic succession. And I think Gallagher lost because he kind of sunk his own case because he had he had to keep things within a very narrow like interpretive framework in order to win. But I thought that Alex Soren really did kind of a halfway job of presenting the Orthodox case. I would have brought this up in that debate because Numbers 11 is actually a really good proof for the leader of God's people can choose to have authority delegated. So, like in that debate, there was a big argument about, Gallagher kept harping on, we don't see the word uh, presbyter, or, bishop and presbyter are interchangeable, or some people only use presbyter and some only use bishop among the church fathers. So, how are we supposed to know what the actual office and structure was? And I thought Alex should have just brought up, like, I mean, he kind of did a little bit, but I would go back to Numbers 11 and be like, Moses asks for God to give him people that he can delegate authority to. That's not something God tells him to do. That's something Moses asked for. So the leadership of God's people, which in this case would be the church, are really free to create an authority structure to help them. So if it starts out with bishops and deacons, and the bishops are called presbyters, and that's an interchangeable term. And then down the road, you can't have more than one bishop in a city. It's two, whatever, and you start having to have presbyter refers to what we would call a priest today, and the word priest does come from presbyter, prest in Old English. Um, then God's people have a right to create a hierarchy. They just have that authority, right? And God will bless it, and God will pour out the spirit that's on the bishop, on the priests and the deacons. I wish that would have been brought up in the debate. I think that pretty much could have, in 2 or 3 minutes, could have solved a bunch of the issues that they kept arguing about. Um, so there's that. Okay, so but yeah, so there's again, just to reiterate, in all these instances, just like with the judges, just like with anything else, there's no popular sovereignty. There's nothing about the rights of the people. There's nothing in Scripture anywhere along those lines. You really, really have to bend over backwards to try to manufacture modern political theories and ideologies out of the Scripture. It just doesn't work. So, for what it's worth. All right, so next time will be, or when we're actually, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm just going to go ahead and start the Patriarcha, and we're just going to go to about the 40-minute mark. We'll go from there. I'll tell you what, actually, let me go ahead and do this instead. To flesh this out, I'm going to go ahead and do my review that I had planned for House of David for the first 4 episodes. And then next time, so later this week, we'll get into Sir Robert Filmer and Patriarcha, and we'll start working through this. This is going to be one that you kind of have to pay attention to. So let me go ahead and give you my review, and that's what we'll wrap up this episode with. So I watched House of David. I'm going to talk about the positive stuff first, then I'm going to tell you why I stopped watching it. So, positive stuff. They did not make this Game of Thrones Israel version. So that was good. I really like that. And one of the producers of the show is Dr. Nathan Jacobs. He's Orthodox. He's a pretty smart, intelligent, thoughtful guy. And I think he's probably helped keep the show on the rails and told them, hey, we're going to lose a bunch of viewership if you throw in all this nudity or whatever. Or, all that, like, if we throw this all in there, we're going to lose, definitely evangelicals that might watch the show. Other positive things, they portray the giants really well. The battle scenes are really good. The fight scenes are really good. I really enjoyed those. So did the kids. It's very little kids would probably be scared, because of there's sorcery and there's the supernatural. They don't shy away from the supernatural. I really like that. It gets kind of intense. It looks and feels closer to what the conquest of Canaan and Saul's reign and David's reign would have looked like, which is that it looks like a crossover of Lord of the Rings and Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. Like, that's probably a lot more what ancient Canaan looked like. And they bring that up in the show. There's, when they're ready to kill the Amalekites, when they, wipe them out, they describe them as blood drinkers and as, Canaan Ibbles and so on. And there's giants, they're saying all these things, and they're, like, there's evil, there's real evil, there's sorcery, there's curses and all this other stuff. There's demon possession. Like, it's actually, I was very happy with the show because I was really thinking that they were going to try to steer it off in some other direction, sort of, do like Troy did for the Iliad, where they just kind of demythologize everything and take, a lot of the flavor out of it. But they did not do that. So I really appreciated that about the show. Let's see. I want to say some other good things. The acting was pretty good. Like, there was no one that was just really wooden. Saul, the guy who played Saul, did very well. Some of the dialogue, some of the script was really good. In particular, like they very much put you in the mind of like why Saul was doing what he was doing, and kind of showing that he's being this political power broker. Uh, so that was really good. I liked those aspects of the show a lot, and that's kind of what kept me watching the show. Now let's talk about what was wrong with the show, why I stopped watching it. So there's no particular order to any of this, but like immediately when you see David, I'm just like, nope. David is described as, a ruddy, good looking guy. And instead we get this, you know, like this is not the Chad that you're going to follow into battle. This looks like some stupid kid, right? And that's not, you know, this doesn't look like the guy who can take on a lion and kill it, in hand to hand combat, which is what he does in the show and in the Bible. Um, it doesn't inspire any confidence. Doesn't look like a ladies' man, which he was in real life. So I thought that choice was odd, very odd, and I don't think that was a good choice. The other thing is some of the dialogue, some of the script. Oh, I forgot to say, one thing that I also really liked is that Stephen Lang does like a 85% good job of playing Samuel. In fact, it's not him that messes up any of Samuel's part. It's that the script is not very good in a couple places. But Stephen Lang does play very good Samuel actually. And there's a scene where he kills Agag, and he doesn't. He actually does like what's described in First Samuel. I when I was reading back through it again, I was like, oh yeah, because I was like, oh, I forgot about that. It doesn't just say that like Samuel stabbed him. Samuel cut him to pieces, and in the show, he's just bearing down on him. I was like, dang, that's pretty cool, and that's biblically accurate. So, but a lot of the rest of the script is like there's like a lot of the dialogue is just way too casual. So I just live right, just surrounded by like the ancient world and books about the ancient world and books about ancient kings and the Bible and I mean the Iliad. I mean I'm constantly surrounded by all this stuff all the time. This is not how people talked to each other. This is not how people treated each other. It's not even close. I mean, people are so casual in the show, and I know it's being made for an American audience, and I know it's being made for a modern audience, but it just like to for anyone who's like super interested in history and it's going to be a problem because you watch the show and you're just they would not have said that. Nope, they would not have done that. Nope, nope, nope. It made it hard to watch. The other thing that made it hard to watch along those same lines is the acting itself was good, but you could tell like the way that they were told to deliver a lot of the lines. It's almost like they needed more dialogue and more script, like per episode. They should have had a lot more dialogue in some of it, and it should have gone a lot faster. Because what everybody does nowadays, and this is not just a criticism of House of David, this is a criticism of like shows and stuff in general that make a lot of them completely unwatchable for me, especially historical dramas, is and movies too, is that everything's got to be said in this like slow, you know, with all these like significant glances off to the side and pauses and just oh blah 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 blah. Do you believe? And it's like people don't talk like that, dude. Like the people back then, right? It's like everybody's like acting like they're all like keeping some big secret when they talk to each other, but they're all. It's odd. Like it just there's a lot of really weird like pauses, and the lines like they'll deliver a line and like be looking at somebody really intensely, and then there's like a 10-second pause, and then somebody else responds, and it sounds like they're trying to make everything sound like profound. It's like it's not. A lot of it's just kind of banter or dialogue. Put more dialogue in there and then make some of it more important and kind of formal and some of it just more conversational. Um, I'm not sure if I'm articulating that correctly, but that was one of my big criticisms. Is that I was like, this is just not, this is not flowing correctly. Um, my biggest issue that I had a problem with was that I think Dr. Nathan Jacobs is pretty smart, so he should have caught this. Um, if whatever, who cares about my opinion? But um, they make David out to be illegitimate, like his father is with some other random woman. On multiple levels, this is problematic. Number one, as we talked about in the earlier videos in this series, is that David is the 10th generation from Perez. So the show, and here's where it gets crazy, is the show actually, they're like, oh, did you participate in the festival of your people? And David's like, oh, I could not because blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't really say why. And it's like, yeah, because you're a bastard. Like literally in the show. And that's not biblical. They just threw that in there to like create some tension or whatever. And then this is what I really don't like about that whole situation that they just manufacture is that then his mom, who it's like, okay, like she sinned, okay, right? In the show for this to happen. She is like, but I have visions of God and I'm special and my son's special. And this guy, says something to her and she's like, you know what I know? And she does like this whole like leftist, feminist, like put down thing. My son will be remembered. Look after everyone forgets you. Like she's just full of spite and bitterness. And I'm like, that's not repentance. There's nothing. What are you talking about? And this is not how you would have acted in ancient Israel. You'd be lucky to be alive. Anyways. So that really kind of drove me nuts. And so they talk about he can't participate. They reference the fact that he can't participate in the liturgical life of Israel because he's not. Because they know about the show knows about the verse in Deuteronomy 23, and but they do it anyways. I'm like this gums up the works in so many ways. Now either they just didn't know and they just throw it in there because and that's another thing that's in the show too is they make the very weakest parts of the dialogue is when they try to make women have this like profound outsized influence on David and Samuel's wife on him. Like those are by far the weakest parts of the script because it's just heavy-handed and ham-fisted. It's just odd. Like it doesn't fit. And the dialogue is really bad. So I had a hard time with those parts. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else about the show, either good or bad. I feel like there was something else bad that I was gonna say. Um, so is what it is, I guess. Um, I understand like they had to fill a lot of stuff in, because you're trying to get. There's actually a lot of material in the Bible for this storyline. I don't know. Like I said, I watched the first 4 episodes, so that's like half of the first season, and I was just like, I can't do it anymore. There's too much like stuff that I know is wrong, and it's not. It was enjoyable enough that I was able to get to that point. There were some parts that were really cool and that I really liked. Maybe you'll have to watch it and make up your own mind. But that is my kind of my criticism of that. Again, it was actually better than I expected. I was expecting not to like it at all and like not to get through episode one, but episode one was actually pretty good. Um, but stuff starts adding up, and it's like okay, we can see the preoccupations of not Dr. Nathan Jacobs, but I'm sure all the other people making this show. It's pretty clear what their preoccupations are. They're very normy in a lot of ways. And the only reason they put all the Nephilim and supernatural and all that stuff in there is because I think that's a huge hot topic right now. Like everybody's into that. So they're doing that to kind of capitalize, right, and play to a certain audience. Um, yeah. So I was ultimately kind of disappointed. Started out strong, and then just sort of went down. And not even went down, just consistently built up enough annoying stuff that it got me to stop watching. I guess that's the way I'll put it. So, anyways, hope you guys have a good day. I'm gonna end this with a happier song now that I've panned this show that our Orthodox friend worked on, and you know, gave you that real downer opening. So I will be back soon, and we will go ahead and start Patriarcha. Appreciate you guys. Oh, please, by the way, everybody needs to like and comment and subscribe. So I got like 80 something people watch the first video, and I've only got 26 subscribers. The reason I say this is because if you want this information to get out, and the algorithm and all that other stuff, you have to like, comment, and subscribe. Actually, I'll tell you a really funny story. So I have a friend named Andy, and Andy is a very good friend. He cracks me up. And we did dinner together. And I explained to him, because he didn't know anything about this, because he's a pure soul, whatever. He's laughing right now watching this. But he didn't know anything about the YouTube algorithm. And so he said, wait, so my comments like drive, like, put, when you more comments on a video, like makes it more available to the algorithm? I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like, what about if they're negative comments? And I was like, oh, that's even better, because then people argue. And then that generates more, and it drives it even further. So if you see Andy like posting all this crazy stuff and trying to pick fights in the comment section, he's just being a good friend. He's trying to get people to argue with him so that there'll be more comments on the videos, because he's a good friend. Anyways, just wanted to throw that out there. All right, guys. Well, thank you, and have a good day.
The story in your name. The story in your name.